Hey, welcome to the Juice Bar Experts podcast, where we are going to give you tips, tools, strategies for launching a new juice bar or scaling and increasing the profitability and efficiency in your existing juice bar. I'm your host, Andrew McFarland. For the last 10 years, I've been in the juice bar business, running my own juice bars, as well as helping hundreds of entrepreneurs all around the world launch successful juice businesses. So without further ado, let's get into it. Where we're actually going to be interviewing someone in the community, actually a former client of ours, Tom, the founder of Virtue Juice Bar. And they have a really interesting and unique approach, and they've been doing some exciting things. And so I'm excited to have this conversation and just expose you guys in the community to another person's experience, as well as a variation of ways that you guys can approach your business development. So how you doing today, Tom?
Doing pretty good. Thanks, Andrew. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, definitely. So to start, I don't know if you feel inspired, but I would love for you to share with the audience a little bit about kind of your inspiration to get started, a little bit about your journey in developing your business, and kind of how things look in your company in the present day.
Yeah, sure. I'd be happy to. So, you know, it's been a journey now for probably a little more than 3 years. But if you think about kind of the backstory goes quite a bit deeper. And essentially, we moved in this town. I live in the city of Vacaville, which is right between San Francisco and Sacramento. So it's at the junction towards heading north into Oregon. And we moved here really to get closer to my wife's family. She's originally from this town of Vacaville. It's got about 100,000 people in this town, and there's a large military base here. And she's a she's a daughter of former Air Force, um, now retired. So we moved into this town to get closer to her family, and it was related to her health because she's been suffering from MS. And so multiple
Mm.
sclerosis since, it goes back to 1998, and we've been married for 25 years. So it's probably a good, 23 years now. And so really, it wasn't as challenging as it's been in the last 5 years or so. And so we decided to move here a few years ago. And really moving here, we realized just how much fast food is in the area. This area here is just a plethora of fast food, and there really weren't too many healthy options. And so a little bit of a frustration, just kind of moving into an area and kind of managing through that. And we had been eating healthier and trying to eat healthy, just for her condition. Um, and mine too. I mean, nowadays it seems like more than ever, people are really starting to think more about their health. And so um, I was working a corporate job, and I've been in corporate America, for 30 years now. And I think we just got to a point where we started thinking, what else is out there and what could we do? And and it was really kind of this moment where my wife, her name's Michelle. So Michelle was here with her sister, and they were on hold with there's a market here in town. They've got a juice bar, and they were waiting on hold forever just to get an order through. And it was an order for juice and bowls, and it was for all of us. And this was kind of like a routine thing where they would just wait and wait. And, you'd get there, there'd be a line. And so my sister-in-law just happened to blurt out, do you know what this town needs? It's a juice bar, like someone to compete against this market. And
Right.
so like right at that moment, we had this kind of inspiration that was, potentially our play, our next move.
Do you find that you were kind of the person that always felt like you wanted to be an entrepreneur, or were you almost as a byproduct of feeling like I need to start this juice bar, you became an entrepreneur?
It's such a good question. looking back, I've always had the inspiration to do something on my own, but there's a big difference in actually pulling the trigger and doing it. And so, looking
Mhm.
back in my life, I would think about, whether it's a possible product, it's kind of like that whole Shark Tank, do you have that right idea? And is
Right,
now the time? And for whatever reason, I don't think I'm a huge risk taker. Um,
right.
and so I kind of always just maintained that status quo. And, it's not that that was a bad thing. I've always been, motivated by the work I do and, the goals that I set. And so achieving goals is really something that, it's really meaningful for me. I'm a competitive person. So I
Mhm.
think, I think it was always there, kind of deep, deep inside, kind of lurking. That's something that I wanted to do. And so, you start thinking about that you only live once type of feeling, and is
Right.
now the time. And I think it was that combined with the need and the opportunity. And that's really what, made it happen.
I think that's so interesting because I always ask myself, what is it inside of people who are similar to you and myself that have this entrepreneurial disposition in, in a greater or lesser degree, but finally make the decision to start a business. Because a lot of times you can see, and I talk to a lot of people too in the audience who are listening to the podcast or watching the YouTube videos and they're doing it for years. I'll talk to somebody and say, "Oh, I've been listening to your content for 5 years and now is the time that I'm going to make this decision to move forward." And I'm always curious as to, does something just click? Is it the perspective that you only live once? Is it realizing when there is a golden opportunity in front of you that time is of the essence and you can't kind of wait in the lobby of life for too long? uh, that's something that I always think about. Okay, so fast forward to you're in a place where you make the decision, you realize that your market is in need of a competitor to this grocery store or other market, and you say, okay, I'm going to move forward. So what happens next?
Yeah. So at that point, we started thinking that maybe a franchise could be the right thing for us, because I've never, like, frankly, been in the restaurant business. And so, I frequent juice bars. I'm a fan. Um, I'm one that can just pull in a lot of information on what I like and kind of what feels right. And so I just simply started looking at different franchise models, and I
Hmm.
looked at probably 5 or 6 of them. And I think it was the best thing ever. I think, to the audience, one thing that really helped me was just being able to talk with them and learn from them and ask questions. And they by law, they have to send out their prospectus to anyone who's interested and who essentially qualifies. And so getting their information is super helpful as well. So you start to see,
Hmm.
financials, and these are really large documents. And so that was super helpful. Um, but ultimately, after really kind of spending probably a year or almost a year in doing that sort of research, we came to the conclusion, after getting pretty close, to signing on the dotted line, we came to the conclusion that, yeah, we're just not ready. And there was something that was
Hmm.
tugging at us, thinking that it just wasn't right. And so, anyway, long story short, we backed away for a few months, and during that time, it was our business attorney who suggested, how about if you think about doing something on your own? And so that was another turning point.
Right. Was there something in particular with the franchise? Was it financial? Was it kind of the restrictions? Was it the fact that it wasn't really a reflection of something that expressed your unique values? What was it that made you feel like moving towards your own brand was more attractive than buying into a franchise?
Yeah, so for each one of the franchises, there seemed to be one thing that just would stand out, that just wasn't really kind of in line with kind of my thoughts. And I had this feeling like, if we're going to do this, having the control about going the direction and taking the path that we want to go down would be, really valuable. And,
Mhm.
not having that franchise over us and really dictating what we were supposed to be doing and not doing. And I don't know, I think it was that freedom. And it
Right.
finally just caught up to me that that maybe it was better just to take a pause and just reflect. And that's what we did. And the one franchise that we were really talking to, we got pretty far with. Um, just in the negotiations, we were starting to realize just how limited the flexibility is. And so that
Yeah.
was really a point where we started to rethink it, and we kind of backed down on that plan and took a pause.
Right. Yeah, I think a lot of times people don't realize, and obviously you being someone who's gone deep down that rabbit hole, many people don't realize the kinds of terms, uh, in the fine print that are involved in the franchise agreements, and it's obviously different for every company. But we've had people who are in franchises even reach out to us and say, "Hey, I can't get my food costs down, but my franchise agreement doesn't really allow me to buy from vendors that are not approved by the franchising company, and that's kind of tied my hands together in being able to actually save money and make money and be profitable." So I think just from my personal perspective, knowing what I know, I think it was wise ultimately for you to start your own concept. So from there, you decided to take a pause, and then when did you pick back up, and how did you start actually putting some time and energy and resources to launching the business?
Yeah, it was probably, a couple months later. I think we just took this pause, and you go through this time where you're just reflecting on all the work you put in over the last year and what you've learned. And I think we grew during that time frame, but it was really our business and real estate attorney who kind of gave us that idea. She'd check in with us from time to time, and when she mentioned it, we just thought about really not having the experience. And we had a lot of information, but not having ever done it before, um, made us kind of feel like we are really putting ourselves out there. And so the one thing I think I stepped into next was really starting to put some plans together and just kind of formulating this business plan on paper. And I was just trying to like kind of wrap my mind around what it would be like what could it be like. And so and that's what kind of this very like this framework started to come together. And throughout that is when, I'm sure it was during that time when I came across probably one or two or 10 of your videos online, probably YouTube. And I just got pulled in. I got to tell you, the videos were super helpful.
Oh, great. Yeah, I'm happy to hear that. I feel like it's I often talk about how when I was starting my business, I know that feeling so well, right? Like just being extremely inspired to start a business, and especially a business that's going to help people, but simultaneously being terrified and overwhelmed by all the things you don't know. And especially in an industry that is, in a new way, because I think that there's always been juice bars around, but in this new paradigm, having juice bars that are really catering to the health conscious consumer. Um, it was just, and the cold pressing, it was just, yeah, it was scary. And I think looking back at all the money that I wasted and all the mistakes that I made and all the times that I didn't sleep, that was one of my big inspirations for starting to create content for other people to give them that perspective. So glad that it was valuable.
Yeah, no, super valuable. And so yeah, that's what jump started it. And my attitude was, if we go down the path of the franchise, you pay the franchise fees, and essentially they train you, give you this binder, and you've got everything kind of already detailed. They've already gone through everything. And I started
Hmm.
thinking about, investing in yourself and start a juice bar. And I started thinking, well, you're kind of that same, you offer that same sort of thing
Hmm.
outside of the franchise world. And so I was trying to equate just in my mind, my investment in the franchise world versus investing with you, and what we could do together, you and I. So that was how I
Right.
ended up eventually just picking up the phone and calling.
Yeah. And I think that, people really get into franchises for one of two reasons. One of them is the brand recognition, right? And the other one is the systems that exist. And the systems ultimately that make these businesses work are all the same. It's like, you build a car, it's got to have wheels and a steering wheel for now, right? Until these self-driving cars come out. But at this moment, there's just, I see these principles and kind of laws that make these businesses work, which, you figure out if you've done it enough. And in terms of building a brand, which, I commend you guys because you guys have done such a great job and continue to do a great job in developing your brand. Um, but people will find that trust and loyalty if you can do that well and in a way that can speak to them and that they relate to. And so I feel like a lot of the value that you probably would have been receiving, you were able to kind of create on your own anyway.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that took some time. I mean, that was a lot of energy, a lot of deep, critical thinking about what does that brand look like and what does it feel like, and how does it come together. But I think you're right. I think getting there was so important and so valuable at the same time. And I think for anyone out there that's looking to do something like this, putting that energy up front about just just what they're dreaming up. I mean, even putting those thoughts on paper, and and thinking about naming your company early on, because the original name we came up with actually had been taken by another company back east, and we just wanted to do the right thing and not step on their toes.
Right.
So we scrapped everything and started over with the whole branding effort, but I'm so glad we did.
Yeah, definitely. So, so you decided, we got connected and we got to start, working together. How long was the process? And, in the process, what were some things that maybe either surprised you or kind of you might feel are valuable to share with other people that they can look out for that you experienced that you did not expect?
Yeah, so I think the one thing that you helped me realize probably more than anything was how much I needed to do on my own. And
Mm,
you think about hiring someone and getting help like you offer. And I think the one thing that I valued just with your approach more than anything was that you are really kind of this mentor, and you're not there to do it all. It's not like you had the forms and here it is and let's go. It was more about, I want you to learn. And I took that to heart. And I think right now, I mean, we're right in the thick of things, obviously, um, but going through our menu costing and really understanding kind of how to go about that has been so
mm,
critically important. And even after your training, I think you fall into these traps where you think you kind of know, and
right.
you really have to go back to the basics, and you have to go back to that training. And that's essentially what we've done. We've gone through and redone all of our spreadsheets, and there's so much to that in this business. And I mean, that can make or break a company.
Yeah, I think it's interesting to what you mentioned before because uh, I always it's almost this, they talk about the story of the um, caterpillar becoming a butterfly, and if the caterpillar doesn't have enough resistance as it's transitioning into a butterfly, its wings don't develop the strength to actually fly. Like if you were to open the cocoon, um, it wouldn't be strong enough. And I feel like I've seen people who, especially when you're looking to buy into a franchise and you really don't know how involved do you need to be? Are you just basically buying a business in a box and you just let it run, right? Or are you running the business day to day? How much time does that take? What's the reality of it? And you're, so many people are in different situations in terms of how they want to interface with their business. But I see that it's so critical that in this process of someone going from having a business concept to actually launching a business, there is sort of a personal journey that people go on to becoming really responsible for the thing that they're birthing, right? It's easy in some ways to have something that you just purchased, but you don't become the person that is capable of maintaining and growing that vehicle or that asset in the way that it needs to be, because you don't actually know how it works. And I often say um, you can't manage what you don't understand. And a lot of times I think people don't understand their businesses enough to make them thrive, even if they have a great concept and they have a great menu and they have all these things going for them, but they don't really understand the components that make it work. And so for that reason, they can't adapt to the natural forces of the market or the environment or weather. And I think even as we're recording this, this is such a unique time that we're in that I'd love to speak about more in a moment. But it's I think it's important, and also just to, as a credit to you, me knowing you and having worked with you, you are someone who's very detail oriented, and I think just has a natural disposition to want to understand, to want to learn. Because I think a lot of times people don't want to know. They prefer to be blind to it because it might overwhelm them. And this is even for people who are entrepreneurs and have been for a while. I even find that, like, around their finances, they don't want to look at their profit and loss statements, or they don't even do them because it's a very sobering reality. And that's something that we have to do in order to steer our business in the right direction. And so I think you've definitely always been someone that I've observed has the qualities of someone who's going to be successful, because you're so inspired and interested in the details of how things work and why they work, and wanting to adjust those things just naturally, from what I observe, is who you are.
Yeah, thank you. No, it's flattering to hear that. I think, my dad, he's no longer around, but I'd have to, pay tribute to him. He was like a master craftsman when it came to, building, um, projects that involved wood and restoring cars, and he had this attention to detail like no other. And I'd be out in the garage helping him or holding something, and it's probably through osmosis I picked up all this. But
Right.
but he had this ability just to kind of, if he had to build something and he didn't have a tool, he'd actually build the tool to make something. So that was something that I
Wow.
grew up around, and I
Right.
think I've taken from him, and really trying to probably just apply it. And I don't know, I do like building things and understanding how things work, and that's probably what you're picking up on.
Yeah, definitely. So I also, in the near future, want to talk about the uniqueness of what Virtue really, I would say, pioneered to my knowledge. Um, but before we do that, was there anything else that you felt called? I know we were kind of talking about the process. What else kind of stood out to you, if anything, that you learned in the development process, or any hiccups that came up in particular in your situation that might be some kind of guideposts for other people to look out for as they're developing their businesses?
Yeah, I think the biggest one for us is, we went into a building that was really a bare shell, or, I forget what they refer to it as, vanilla shell or something to that effect. It
Right.
was
Yeah.
basically
Hmm.
co- concrete and plywood on the walls. And we literally transformed the space into Virtue. And the cost of doing that was, it was really pretty steep. And even our builder is someone who, specializes in quick service or quick serve restaurants rather. And he even said, if you're going to do this again, call me. He's like, we know kind of places that are sitting idle that we can transform for you for a lot less than actually going in and building it from scratch.
Right.
And so that was one thing I took away. Maybe not so much, related um, to the work that you and I did. I think looking back on it, I think the investment was wise though. And I even recall, chatting with you about it. And when you choose one place over another, we chose foot traffic, and I'm glad we did. So many people compliment us on our location, and I think as we
Right.
grow, it's only going to be, that much better. So
Yeah, I think it's important actually to emphasize this point because in so many areas of business development, there's going to be investments that we make that are either cheap in front but expensive in the long run, or expensive up front but make us more money in the long run. And obviously, everybody's resources are different, and the capacity that people have to make decisions that are going to support them, kind of either short term or long term, have to be considered. But even thinking about something like cold pressing, for example, the machinery compared to a centrifugal juicer is much more expensive. But the upside that you get is you're going to get higher yields on your produce, which we all know is one of the kind of major categories of expense when it comes to running this kind of business. So I think I always, 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 always suggest that if someone is choosing between a location that is more ideal, but may cost them more upfront in the build out and they can afford to make the investment, it will pay itself back by leaps and bounds in the future because you can't, nothing makes up for a bad location versus a good location. So I think ultimately, like you said, it was probably the wise thing to do, even though it was not the most convenient financially in the beginning.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, so it's things like that. I mean, there's so many examples that I could bring up. I mean, you think that you go into something like this with some knowledge and understanding, but really, I think through our conversations, I think you'd provide a nice counterpoint, and then we'd have these discussions and try to understand what's the best way to go, and and I think that was really valuable to me. I enjoy hearing both sides and trying to make a decision, and and so I think it can be anything from where you're going to put your POS. And originally, my idea was to put it up front, and your idea was to put it towards the back. And I think for good reason. I'm so glad we put it back there because we do get lines that to the door, and if it was up front, it might not work so well. So
It's
there's
funny
that.
because this is one of the conversations that comes up a lot with our clients. We're always having this debate about where to put the POS machine.
Right.
And yeah, and I often tell them, I'm like, come back to me 6 months after you do it and you'll be happy that you did it this way, because you start to really understand more the psychology of customer flow, and also how important it is, I find, for people to walk through your space, to really invite them in, right? Where they can have more of a relationship to the environment. It's also why, some people don't know this, but even in grocery stores, for example, they place kind of high commodity items like water, usually in places that are very inconvenient, where you have to walk through the entire store. Why? Because more likely at that point you have traversed the store and seen other things that you might want to purchase. And so it increases the likelihood that you'll spend more money, as opposed to putting everything that you want in the place that's most convenient, which in some ways seems counterintuitive, right? It seems like, oh, well, this is the most immediate thing. Let's make it convenient for the customers to do it. But there's other things at play that sometimes people have to look at when it comes to just the overall design of a space.
Yeah, it's like human behavior. It's pretty deep, the psychological aspect of it.
Hmm.
It's a simple concept, right? You're inviting customers in, to have juice, and you wouldn't think about that sort of planning, but it's a critical business step.
That's right. So kind of fast forward again, and one conversation I know that was a big decision for you that we talked about early on is that, cold pressing, and not just cold pressing, but like I said before, to my knowledge, your company was really the first, maybe in the nation, to cold press to order, right? And it was just around the time that Good Nature had launched, or they were about to launch, their X1 Mini, which is a countertop cold press for anybody who's not familiar with it. And this kind of paved the way to creating the opportunity to cold press to order. So maybe you can talk a little bit about that, your process of making the decision to do it, even though there wasn't really a lot of kind of, businesses that you could reflect on the success and kind of the operations of that. And also, how's it going with that at this moment? I'd love to hear you share a bit more about that.
Yeah, so this was a really interesting kind of turning point for us. I think even maybe for yourself, because nobody had ever ventured down this path. And you had introduced me to Good Nature, and I was able to talk with Charlie there at Good Nature, and I always wanted to do cold press. I had a pretty good sense that was, I almost, I mean, I'd say probably 100%, unless the cost was so prohibitive that it didn't make sense. But I really wanted to have a cold press type juice bar and be different. And so I think just in the discussions I had with Good Nature, the opportunity to consider this concept where someone could come in and get a cold press juice made to order that's never been done before was really kind of intriguing to me. And I think it goes back to that whole thought of just being different and building a brand that is unlike, every other brand, and
Hmm.
gives us a chance to kind of stand out. And I know just in working with you and learning from you, having that brand differential is really valuable. It's something that
Yeah.
you can kind of hang your hat on. And so we thought it through. I flew out to New York. We did testing. We did time testing, um, and pretty much determined that it was doable. And so we decided to buy two of the X1 minis and put them into a configuration such that we could have a process flow that would allow for relatively quick juice that's made to order. Um, I know
Hmm.
this is a topic where we might differ. I know you're thinking about speed and delivering quickly, and we're actually trying to take this stance that we can slow down. And so kind of our theme and um, even our Wi-Fi passcode is stay a while. So we're trying to calm people down
Right.
and slow
Yeah.
things down. And so that's been
Yeah.
kind of interesting to play through.
Yeah, I think that a lot of times it depends too on the environments that you're in, right? Like as a business, you're going to have kind of a combination of influencing cultural habits and human habits and also supporting them, right? And so if you're in the middle of New York and you've got a juice bar that's 400 square feet and like there's just certain kind of physical parameters that don't allow you to do that, and just the lifestyle of speed at people which people move. Whereas I think for you guys and the way your business is, because you also have a grab and go and you guys are also prepping juices ahead of time, you kind of give people the option, right? So it's not that you're going to force them to slow down, but it might be something that you encourage, which I think is also a good thing for business owners to understand, that in even developing a menu, for example, or whatever your goal is as a company, understand where you have certain things that are principally true for you that you won't compromise on, and then other things that are values to you. So for me, it feels like slowing down is a value as opposed to a principle, right? Like you allow people to come in and out quickly if they need to. You're not going to force them to stay, but as a value, you appreciate people slowing down. And so you can encourage it, you can support it, and then you can still um, give people the option and the freedom to decide how they want to interface with your business.
Yeah, exactly. That's how we've approached it. And the response that we get is always positive. People that come in that just say, I love your space. It just makes me feel good in here. I don't feel pressured. There's not a lot of impulse. We don't have TV monitors, that are flickering or changing displays. We've purposely done things to kind of just make more of a calmer, inviting atmosphere. Um,
Hmm.
and so that was by design. And I think there's some more things we can do. I think there's some more branding work that we need to do.
Right.
Um, really trying to get the customers to realize how unique Virtue is, within the world
Right.
of juice bars.
Right. Yeah, I think a lot of that too, and to speak to it, I feel like, and this is me also speaking from experience, having run juice bar businesses and being in a place where I think it took me so long to really, and I mean, years and years and years to understand the value of branding. What does a brand really mean? And how to articulate that and express that and market that in a way that customers get, where the values that you have as a business aren't just something that you and your staff hold as a nice little secret, but the customers actually feel it translate into an experience where you're having to have conversations. Like I love that little nuance around having your Wi-Fi password say "stay a while," the kinds of music that you play, right, to encourage a certain pace in the environment, the kinds of furniture that you have. There's all of these things that are going to create an experience that your customers will have, whether it's at the forefront of their mind and they're conscious of it or not. The point is, as you as a business owner and as a company, are you clear about what that is, and are you making your best effort from every dimension possible to give them that experience?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's the fun part of designing something like this. I mean, it's really just a blank sheet that you can start from scratch and build it the way you want it and the way you want to make it feel.
That's
Um,
right.
and so, yeah, it's
And,
that part of it's been fun. I think that's still evolving. I think we can still do more to really enforce and enhance kind of the brand that we're building. Um, I think it's all about trust. I think just having virtue as our business name, just essentially the definition being the behaviors, that show high moral standards. We want that to kind of exude through everything we do.
right. Yeah, that's amazing. I love that, and I also love just knowing that there are such high integrity businesses that are out there. Because I think that's a big thing with people's health and food is it's such a sensitive and sacred thing what you put into your body, and for me it feels paramount that consumers and all of us as individuals can really trust the companies that we're purchasing from because of how vital it is. Sometimes it is literally a matter of life and death. And yeah, I'm glad that your company exists as a company that's doing what you're doing and having such a high moral standard and offering people the opportunity to get drinks that are cold pressed to order, which is going to be the highest quality juice that you can get. And so, to dive more deeply into that topic, how do you feel like that's going? Are a lot of customers taking advantage of that, or mostly are a lot of them buying from the grab and go? What's been your experience on customer buying habits when offering this cold press to order?
Yeah. So from the start, um, I think in any venture, you've got that, trepidation to just get it going. And what we put the emphasis on to start was the made to order. And we really didn't do any bottling for probably, gosh, the first 2 or 3 weeks. And we just wanted to get kind of the staff up to speed and using the X1 minis and at that point, once they became proficient, then we started kind of venturing down the path of bottling. And
Mm-hmm.
that's a whole nother area in itself. And
Right.
I think what we found, and when we look at the data, there was a crossover point to which customers started to trust us and understand like what we're actually bottling is identical to the same juice that they'd be buying from us.
Right.
But they just didn't have, if they were on the go and they just wanted to grab it and go, they could. And
Right.
so I think that was kind of cool to see that transition. And I think it's been working well. The X1 minis they perform really well. We put them through the paces. We're doing single presses one after the next. I think as we've gotten busier, the one thing that we've decided to do is invest in the X1. And
Right.
what that's allowed us to do is take the pressure off the front of house and allow us to do more bottling and back.
Right.
And it's really been great to kind of balance that out. We were doing it, we were getting by, but you have to really pick and choose the times when you're bottling, and we just
Mm-hmm.
couldn't do it in a volume sort of way um,
Right.
as you start getting busier. So I think having the X1 is giving us total flexibility now, um, and so we're glad that we have it, and we're really putting it to use.
I think that a lot of times too, even in business development, these are kind of good problems to have, right? As long as you, and I know that the way your kitchen was designed, you kind of had a space already designated that in the event that you did want to upgrade and put a larger X1 in there, that you had the space for it. Um, and sometimes it can be a difficult decision for people up front on, do they buy a large X1, because you don't know what your volume of business is going to be. And for you guys, I honestly think that it kind of evolved ideally, because one, having the smaller X1 minis up front, just for your branding and the customer experience, for them to be able to build that trust, and not having some kind of mysterious, which I think a lot of juice bars have, right? You're like, what's going on back there? And you just don't know, right? You have no idea as a consumer, and you just want to trust. But I think you guys were able to build a lot of that trust through making the juices to order, like you said, bottling things. They know where it's coming from and that it's fresh, and that you guys are a high integrity business. And then once you got to the point where you just realized your sales and your demand were bringing you to a place where you had to grow it, and you had to invest in more equipment, and who knows, one day that might look like a commissary kitchen or another location. It's just the natural progression of reaching your kind of physical restraints and limits, then to be able to make the investment in the larger X1. So how are things going now? I know it's kind of an interesting time, but I'd love to learn a little bit more about, like, how many customers are you doing a day, or how many bottles are you selling a day? What does the volume of your business look like at this moment?
Yeah, I be happy to share that with you. I can just give you one more comment on kind of the planning behind having an X1. Charlie at Good Nature was great. Everything that he shared with us, was very much towards our growth and profitability. And in talking with him and thinking through this process, it's something that they had never experienced before either. I think
Right.
from what you're saying and from what Charlie is saying at Good Nature, that nobody's ever done a made to order cold pressed juice concept. And so in just thinking it through, having that space allowance, it was by design. And we knew, and just in talking with Good Nature, that as we grew, likely we would be needing that. So
Right.
I think it was all about just kind of having that forethought that we could need it, and then plan around it. And that's another thing I think that's so important in developing a concept, is really trying to think about all these ideas and what could happen, or what could you need. Um,
Hmm.
and
I
so
always feel that.
it's worked well.
Yeah, I feel like that's the journey of the entrepreneur, right? It's like you have to know the wave is coming before you start paddling. That's always it, right? You have to know where your market's going before you open your business. Otherwise, you're behind, right? If you wait until it's at peak demand, you're late. And so I think everything as a principle is having the foresight to see where things are going and planning accordingly.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and as far as the business, we're in really tough times. I think I was just looking at the numbers. We're fortunate overall. Um, it looks like we'll be down about 15%, which, I mean, I say that number and it makes me kind of feel good considering what's going on out there. It's,
Yeah.
seeing some other places that are having really tough times. I feel for them. But I think what we're doing right now is really trying to exude who we are and what we stand for and how we can help. And I think those that have been, either, following the stay-at-home orders, you start getting into this pattern where, you're probably snacking more, you're maybe stressed out, and people are just maybe consuming more calories than they need to, and probably taking on some weight. And I mean, we've never seen so many juice cleanse orders than we've had in the last few months. And so,
Right.
we might not have as much foot traffic, but the orders, basically what I'm trying to explain to the team is that, if we're not seeing the single order purchases that we used to see, um, and our sales are going to be down by, let's say we would normally have um, 100 sales and we only have 30, then there's got to be a way that we need to triple the business. And so how do we triple the
Yeah.
business with a third of the people? And so you start
Right.
building these ideas and plans and you start working through these concepts. And ultimately, that's kind of our goal to maintain the flow, keep the doors open, is to, essentially sell more to each person that does come in. And so,
Yeah.
it's easier said than done.
Yeah.
We we had we made it through March, the tail end of March, without a problem. April was fine, and then May was really tough. Um,
Right.
but here we are talking, and today was the best day that we've had in quite a while, like maybe
Right.
in months. Like we had a really good day today.
Well, that's good to hear. I think that it's it's really, and for people who are listening to this at different times, because I know that this podcast will exist probably for a while, but right now, present day, we're going through this pandemic, and a lot of retail businesses are having to pivot. Some of them are shut down, um, and I think it's really interesting to see how, one, we know people will always need to eat and to consume beverages, but how they do that and what businesses are really being prioritized for the consumption of food and beverages. And have you found that just in your own strategy, have you guys taken on, new marketing practices? The 30 customers, for example, that you might have a day at this point, where are they coming from? Is it existing customers, or have you been able to expose yourself to a new market of people who are kind of used to ordering from home? What has been your approach to that?
Yeah. So yeah, I think this is where we've been really um, quick to pivot, and I think being nimble has been so important for us. And when the grocery stores started to run out of fruits and vegetables, we saw a need there that we were able to fill just using our organic, you know, produce distributor. And so we went to them and we asked them, to see what we can do as far as, building some produce boxes. And,
Right.
we became kind of a miniature, produce market. But then quickly, like really quickly, I think we kind of had the edge for the first 2 weeks. And then so many other restaurants were doing the same thing, and that sort of
Right.
fall off pretty quickly.
Right.
So that was a pivot that we really tried to play up, and that got us through a couple of weeks. And then the next pivot for us was this notion of helping the first responders. Um,
Right.
we were really set to start delivering to a big hospital. We had gone through and gotten contracts to be able to deliver essentially meals. This was before COVID hit, and we were building essentially these staff meal boxes that were really healthy. It was a salad, a juice, it was a no bake bar, and just either a great breakfast or lunch. And right when we were ready to sign off on this contract is when COVID hit, and so um, I called the hospital. I said, we're here for you. We've got things designed for you, and we can be here 24/7 as an overflow kitchen. And they said, we're sorry, we can't order from the outside like we've been doing. And so that was a mandate that came down. And so that was a tough
Interesting.
blow for us because we thought we were so prime and that was going to be the ace in the hole. But unfortunately, we had to repivot. And what we did was we had an opportunity to to get some funding from there's these the first responders have these associations, and the associations have funding, and we thought if we can get some funding from them we can actually start donating juice.
Right.
And we got some really good coverage on that, and we were able to start donating juice, and ultimately we got back into the hospital, but it was by way of donation. um,
Wow.
it was it was pretty wild how we ended up turning that around, but we were getting funding from other sources to make it happen. And so
Right.
that really covered us all through April. And we had a good April, but then May hit, and then we were scrambling. And so, to your point, we've really had to pivot and pivot multiple times. And so really the focus on May was how do we start delivering and what could we do in 6 packs and 4 packs and, take that idea of multiplication and start playing it out. I think we were too late for May, and it was just too much to bear.
Right.
Um, but here we are, and it's just it's a new day. We're launching new products. Um, our marketing game has improved dramatically, and so
Yeah.
much of that is so important.
Yeah. I think that, to another critical piece, which for me relates to the branding, because branding and marketing are kind of the two areas I find that brick and mortar and retail business owners feel like they have the luxury of overlooking because it doesn't feel like it's intrinsic to their business. When you develop a business, you need equipment, right? You can't create your product without a juicer. So that feels like it's more essential. And in some ways it is, but uh, at a certain point, and especially in a time like this, I feel a lot of business owners start to realize how critical it is to have a strong connection to their audience so that when they do pivot, they already have a direct line of communication to let them know, hey, this is what we're doing now. Do you want to partake in this? As opposed to finding that, that 100 customers that walked into your store, you have no way of contacting them at this point. So it's always wise for people to understand the importance of marketing from that standpoint, but also know that in times that are even good, they can be better if you have that direct line of communication. And the other thing that I think is might be a good piece of insight that I always think about when it comes to business development in relationship to marketing is understanding the cultural temperament at this moment is really around health, but people sometimes don't associate the products that people serve at juice bars with what they are trying to accomplish now. And so sometimes it's not a matter of even developing new products, it's a matter of contextualizing the menu that you have and the services that you have to build the narrative that will support their understanding of why they need it. So if it's really understanding that, your immunity, there's ways to build it. There are products and juices and, smoothies that you can consume to support immunity. Have that conversation around the present moment narrative because we know that that's an important thing in this moment for everyone. And how do you package and create programs for people that support their immunity so that then they become more inclined to invest in that, as opposed to just thinking that a juice is nice to have and it's good for my health and I'm going to maintain it. But when it becomes essential, right? When food actually does become medicine, as that famous Hippocrates quote says, really let food be that medicine. When people see it that way, it's critical and it's essential and people won't overlook it. And sometimes it does take a little bit of work and a little bit of marketing and a lot of conversation for people to make that connection so they can invest in the service that you're providing.
Yeah, I think it's so valuable, so true. I think the education in that line of sight that you talk about through marketing is so critical. I studied marketing. I've got a degree in it, and I feel like I'm catching up every day, trying to figure out today's approach to marketing. And it's
Right.
not that the concept has changed; it's just the way we go about it. And
That's right.
where we used to have minutes of exposure of something, we have like less than a second with a swipe and it's gone. And how do you stop that scroll and get someone's attention? And again, we're looking at it a little bit differently. We're taking different approaches. We're just trying to approach things from different ways. And I think if you show up differently, I think that's where the attention is gained. um,
Yes.
I just
Always.
yeah, you can't be like everyone else. And I think that's where we're going, probably more so than ever, is how we, how we're found, um, and how people start to relate to us and see us, differently. But that's
Yeah.
where
I
I think
really,
it gets fun, but it's also challenging.
yeah. Yeah, definitely. I really feel like the companies that are able to tread water at this time and the companies that launch uh, kind of in the second phase of this whole pandemic dissolving are going to do really well because one, you're going to discover channels and things that it's kind of like a business's immune system, right? It's like you're being challenged right now. And if your immune system can weather the storm, you will still have the faculties that you gain during this period of time, right? The new sales channels, the new customer relationships, the new marketing strategies. Those will all be things that you can utilize. But as a byproduct of this present moment, you've been forced to cultivate those things. And then when everybody goes back and, to whatever degree, less or more, into walking into retail stores and buying juice, you'll still have that as a viable option. So I think that there's, on the horizon, things are going to be really positive. It's just a matter of treading water long enough at this moment to overcome the present moment challenges. Uh, so
Yeah, it's
moving on, I
survival.
want,
Yeah, definitely
yeah,
survival.
yes, yeah, it is. Um, so kind of to talk about a few other things. I know you and I've had a conversation prior to recording this podcast about something pretty exciting that you've been working on that I would love for you to share with our audience. And yeah, maybe I won't say too much because I'd like to have you share it. But um, in essence, it's something that you realized a lot of kind of small or food service businesses were challenged by, which inspired you to expand, or I should say, kind of create a new business altogether that is somewhat related to what you do. But yeah, can you tell us a little bit about Virtue Direct and what the inspiration was there and what it is that you guys are doing?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'd be happy to. So we we've realized that as a small business, we really only have this one location, and just through our current providers, our current distributors, looking at all of our food costs and really trying to do the right thing. Um, from a produce point of view, we're fully organic, and we really try to put an emphasis on that throughout all that we do, and we were realizing that our food costs were higher than they really should be to be within the ratios that you might suggest or that might be relevant for the industry. And as much as I tried to negotiate, I found it really difficult to bring those costs down. And so I started thinking that maybe this whole distribution network, we're kind of like getting whipped at the end of the tail here. And, we're taking a brunt of probably the highest cost possible, being a small independent who's buying in small volume and buying a lot, repeatedly. Not a lot, but in volume, a small amount more often. And we started thinking, gosh, there's got to be another way. And so I started wondering if, we could band together a number of restaurants and try to do some group buying, to try to bring that cost down. And I really didn't get too far there. But, throughout this, I started wondering, do I have contacts and do I have relationships? And it was just by happenstance. Like I was visiting a friend in the area, actually a college fraternity brother, and we just we're just hanging out and chatting, and we are talking about other friends of ours, other fraternity brothers, and my friend Rich's name came up, and I started learning about what he was doing in the nut industry, primarily around almonds and almond processing, and the volume he was doing. It was really impressive, and so just that one discussion led to me connecting with Rich, and seeing his operation and what he's doing it was really eye opening to me. It really opened my eyes to what could be possible from a larger production point of view. And so, um, I think it probably took maybe 6 or 9 months, and throughout that time, he was kind of understanding what we were doing and what we were up to, and I was learning more about his operation, and he was starting to think about bringing in some superfoods and really starting to offer other types of products, mostly dry goods. And it was just like this one day when we were just, we had just come together, and it was just this kind of moment where he said, you know what? He's like, with what you're doing, maybe we ought to strike up some sort of a partnership and approach this together, because he's like, I really think that, for businesses like yourself, we can create a movement here to help others. And, knowing what we were going through, I mean, it was music to my ears. Um,
Mm.
and so, for about, gosh, it's all come together pretty quickly, but through his connections and through the ability that I've got to create and build, we've created this company called Virtue Direct. And essentially Virtue Direct is really designed to be, one, affordable, and then two, really to go direct. I mean, to essentially avoid a middleman, to help bring down costs for the small restaurants and cafes and juice bars, and um, three, just make just fresh products. And it was very, very simple approach to those three pillars:
Right.
affordable, fresh, and direct. And so we built Virtue Direct. We happen to be in the soft launch phase. We're going to be launching within a few days, and essentially, it's all the products. I mean, we're moving all of our buying over to Virtue Direct right now, or anything that could be from a whole variety of nuts and seeds and nut butters and different powders that you might use to specialty products and spices and sweeteners and this whole gamut of products that work well for our industry. And so it's exciting. It's really exciting, and I think our whole goal is to help these companies just improve their bottom line, and it can't be happening at a better time than right now.
Yeah, definitely. So what's the web domain if people want to visit the website and learn more?
Yeah, sure. So the website is virtue-direct.com. So virtue-direct.com. We've kept all of the same Virtue branding that we started with Virtue Juice, and really, it's kind of this extension of what we've created on the juice side. And the goal is really to provide just high quality products um, into food service, but it's also open to the public. So we'll have a retail sector as well. But really, our focus is to help small and medium sized businesses.
Great. And so what's your distribution network look like? Are you guys shipping throughout the US? What is that? What's the territory you guys are taking care of?
Yeah, so that's something that we're working through right now. We've got orders that are currently shipping into the greater Northern California area. However, we're starting Southern California up next week, and we look to be shipping kind of within the entire west coast of the states here. So I think to start, it's going to be California, northern and southern, and then we'll expand to Oregon, Washington, and then go from there. Um,
Great.
but yeah, it's
Okay. So
yeah. Go ahead.
for the audience, you guys can just check in with the website and see, where the distribution network is at the time that you're listening to the podcast to see as, things expand, if it opens up in your area and you guys want to take advantage of some of the products and some of the savings that you guys might have, definitely check out the website. Um, Great. Anything else that you feel like is important to mention about the service you guys are offering at Virtue Direct? And other thing too, I want to mention to the audience, just if you guys don't have experience, because I know sometimes um, it's hard to understand how important it is. Two major costs in your business: your labor and your product costs. So even saving 5% on purchasing something that you're going to purchase, hundreds of pounds of throughout the year can lead to significant savings in your bottom line. So I know for me, this is something I often really emphasize with our clients is learning how to negotiate with vendors, constantly seeking better pricing for your products because, the short term and in the long term, it will mean a lot to your bottom line.
Yeah, so true. And that's really this the mission that we've got. I mean, we're looking at it as a movement, and I think there's no better time than the present to launch something like this. And I think one thing that I'd love to be able to offer to your clients, future clients, is I can offer a discount code. We can even name it just Start a Juice Bar, and I can get that set
Awesome.
up, and welcome to pass that along to you so that your clients can go in and start seeing additional savings right off the bat.
Awesome. Wonderful. Well, thank you for doing that. That's amazing. So, as we wrap things up here, a question that I'm always curious about because I feel like it's really important for people to connect with, why they're doing what they're doing and what the fruits of their labor really are. So, in your instance, I'm curious of, uh, what have been the most fulfilling moments for you thus far running this business?
Gosh, here's I think the first one was I mean, I love being there in the juice bar. I think just being there talking to the customers, you learn so much. Just sharing kind of our approach is always kind of interesting and novel for them. Um, but I think first and foremost is getting the customer to realize, how our juice tastes compared to a traditional um, centrifugal juice. And I kind of want the customers to understand that before they actually take their first sip. And it's not that I'm leading them to it's not that I'm leading them, but what I want them to kind of really think about is just the consistency of, a cold pressed juice, and especially it coming off of the Good Natured juicers. I mean, I think it's second to none. It's great. And just
Yeah.
to see the smile on their face, I think to answer your question, the first thing would be just kind of experiencing that moment where they realize and they say, "Gosh, this is really good." And
Yeah.
then they just come back. I think hooking customers and bringing them back is really the goal, and I love doing that. I think it's fun,
Yeah.
but secondly, sitting down with them and I think just learning about their lives, and we've got one customer who I didn't realize it. I hadn't met him on prior occasions, but he had been coming in like every other day. And he's probably in his 50s, and when I had met him, he said, he's like, I've been coming here every other day and I've been working out every other day. And he says, I want you to know for 30 years, I've been trying to get under 200 pounds. And so I asked him, I said, how's that going? And he said, well, today is the day. He's like, after today,
Wow.
I will be under 200 pounds. And, I had this
Wow.
feeling like, you just get chills. And when you start to realize that you potentially could be helping people, change their lives and make a difference. And I think that was when I realized that we really had something, and it was
Yeah.
just more than a juice bar. And I think ever since that moment, I've been really looking and listening for more of those opportunities and experiences, and we keep finding them. And so, I think anyone that decides to go into this, I think you have to have that kind of that knowing in advance that you could be presented with these situations.
Yeah.
And there are situations also that are really eye opening. You've got someone who's maybe terminal, and you're being asked to help prepare juice or prepare meals for someone who may not make it. And it's like there's an honor there, and there's a lot of respect it's really deep. um,
Yes.
but I mean,
Yeah.
you
I've
might
experienced that.
have had
Yeah.
similar experiences,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's those are the real experiences that stand out. um, we I think if we can get through this, I think we'll be able to get through anything. Frankly, it's really a crazy time. Northern California was plagued last year with huge forest fires. We had these power outages that were happening, and energy spikes, and we had refrigerators that was going down. It was really pretty crazy. But I don't know. I think you just build this backbone, and you just learn how to adapt. And I think that whole saying, and I might not get it right, but I guess what is it? Doesn't break you, makes you stronger.
Yeah. And I think in, you know, these all become different chapters in our story, right? Just building that resilience. And and making it through this time. But to kind of circle back at what you were sharing, it's so important to me that people connect to their why and what fulfills them, and to like you said, to seek it out, because that inspiration and knowing that you are not theoretically but quite tangibly changing people's lives, or you are being offered the opportunity to support someone who is in a life or death situation, um, which I've experienced as well, and there are no words for it. It's beyond humbling, right? It's beyond um, it's something that you become very sensitive to the magnitude and the significance of that kind of responsibility. And not to say that I'm ultimately responsible for someone's decisions that they make or their health, but it feels like a profound honor that someone trusts you as a company enough to walk in and say, this is the decision I'm making, and I'm giving you the opportunity to help me by serving me your product so that I can, uh, make my best effort to be healthy in the way that I feel is right for me. And so, um, yeah, I know it, and it's profound. And I want everyone in the audience to connect to their why and what's inspiring them if they have a business, to remember that, and if they are thinking about starting one, to realize that there are people in your environment that lives will very likely change just from you opening and giving people the opportunity, exposing them to something that they may not have been exposed to before.
Yeah, I think it happens more often than I expected, and I think having um, I have been certified as a functional medicine health coach, and having that background has helped. Even though that's at the very rudimentary basic level, it's helped. But I'm finding that we just need to do more education to our staff to help answer variety of health questions that come up. And we can't be coming across as doctors or nurses or
Mm-hmm.
practitioners. We don't certainly have that certification, but having some guidance and having some understanding, I think it's really important. And so
Yeah.
I would encourage anyone who's thinking about going down this path to have that sort of kind of behind them, or it doesn't take much, but I think it's helpful.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you so much, Tom, for taking this time. It's always a pleasure to speak to you and learn more about how things are progressing. And I just, love your business, and have definitely told you before that you've always been one of our favorite people to work with, because I appreciate your approach. And so, yeah, uh, everyone out there, hope you guys are happy. Hope you're healthy. And thanks again, Tom. We'll see you guys at the next episode.
Thanks, Andrew. Yep, really appreciate it.
You got it.
Have a good day.